There are two Americas, and it isn't a Democratic America or a Republican America or a white and black America anymore. There is an elite America, and then there is everyone else. In elite America, a few things are true for you that aren't true for everyone else. In elite America, the rules are relative. In elite America, power is currency, laws are suggestions, and foreign wars are good for business. And in elite America, the working class of our country, the majority of the nation, are at best individual purchasing units to help pad your stock portfolio. And most of the time, they are nothing more than an inconvenient impediment to your overall economic or political goals. And while that working class toils away in a rugged system of rules, in elite America, you operate in a cushy system of relationships. We are clearly living in unprecedented times, and I don't know about you, but I am really starting to miss precedented times. But with the release a few months ago of more than 3 million pages related to Jeffrey Epstein and the escalation of yet another war in the Middle East, it's going to be a long time until we are back into a timeline resembling anything that could be considered normal. Because both the release of the Epstein emails and our recent war in Iran have made one thing abundantly clear. This whole period of the American story isn't just about the crimes of one depraved man or the ambitions of one depraved Ayatollah. It's about a system of power and power brokers that operate out of sight and act as if the law, not to mention any system of morality, doesn't apply to them. And so far, they've been right. Since Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019, the country has been obsessed with that scandal. It has birthed thousands of conspiracy theories, including unbelievably outlandish ones that are getting harder and harder to refute. Since the Bush administration, we have been hearing ghost stories of one radical regime after another who are always one step away from a nuclear bomb. Both have been trending topics on social media for years. They have each been the singular focus of some of the biggest podcasts and news shows in the world. For many Americans, the last presidential election was almost entirely about one or both of these issues. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and the entire MAGA network campaigned on releasing the Epstein files.
Release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Trump's entire secondary slogan for all three of his presidential campaigns have been America First, brought to you by the President of Peace. But of course, none of these promises have panned out. Americans are very used to broken promises from their political leaders, but these weren't just failed campaign promises. The reality is much, much worse. In the case of Epstein, at first they tried to tell us that there were no files.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends.
Then they tried to tell us that there was nothing of interest in the files.
Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday.
Then they missed deadline after deadline, and only after they were compelled to release the files by a bipartisan mandate from Congress did they release anything at all. And they couldn't even get that right. Large swaths of pages are still unreleased months later. And no doubt, many of these probably contain disgusting pictures and videos that should never see the light of day. But does anyone really believe that the administration is holding all of them back to protect the American people from being unwantedly subjected to horrific material? Because it certainly isn't being held back to protect the victims. Many of their names were accidentally made public, including the names of victims who wished to stay anonymous. But the content that was redacted? Many of the names of Epstein's associates, along with plenty of evidence that should, at the very least, merit ongoing investigation. But as of right now, we aren't going to get it. This isn't just a simple mistake or a bad rollout strategy. Even the most charitable viewing of this miscarriage of justice shows that the administration is more concerned with guarding the reputation of their rich buddies, whose names were redacted, than seeing them brought to justice. Fast forward the tape a mere matter of months. The United States once again finds itself embroiled in yet another hot war in the Middle East. We find ourselves yet again becoming the policemen of the world, while our citizens here at home find it harder and harder to pay bills or pay rent or buy groceries. And as someone who actually does agree that we cannot, under any circumstances, let Iran have a nuclear weapon, even I find it impossible to wonder if there might not have been any number of better ways to prevent that. But these two issues have one thing in common, that despite what they may say during a presidential election, those in power have no interest in telling the American people the truth. They have no interest in getting justice for the, perhaps thousands, of Epstein's victims, and they have no interest in investing in our communities here at home when the Pentagon needs another check cashed. They don't even have an interest in keeping their own campaign promises. It shows that they don't fear the American people. They don't fear the law. It shows that they know there will be no real consequences for any of their actions. They believe that every scandal is manageable and that they won't ever be held accountable, even to their own promises. With the Epstein debacle and the war in Iran, neither issue is another case of the public being bitterly divided over a policy dispute. The American people largely agree here for once, thank God. And the American people want justice. The American people want stability. The question now is, will they ever get it? Well, the Brits might get some justice on their side of the pond, and even under the authoritarian boot of communism, China looks pretty stable right now by comparison. But in the land of the free, home of the brave, we get nothing but crickets. We all know of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's heinous crimes. We all know that yet another long, drawn-out war in the Middle East will do nothing for the millions of Americans suffering at home. But on both counts, even that is only part of the story. As we have talked about on this show before, there is another, more sinister crime being played out on the American people too. Because the game plan for the Epstein scandal and the war in Iran has always been to tell people to not believe their own eyes. The game plan has been to deflect, flood the zone, feign confidence, and turn all things into another culture war bloodbath. And how far has that gotten us? Look around at any number of American cities. How has the homelessness crisis panned out? What about the drug crisis? Is your child's school seeing better days? How reliable is your local healthcare system? How are you handling the cost of living, or the cost of gas, or basic groceries? Because we have lived with this trend long enough that American towns and American families get hollowed out while someone at the top lines their pockets. No matter what Pam Bondi says about the Dow Jones Industrial Average, no matter what Pete Hegseth says about the Strait of Hormuz, no amount of stock market surges or dead-end diplomacy is going to change the fact that Americans are struggling. They're struggling and they're angry. And when they look to their political leaders for any promise of relief or a change in direction, promises they literally campaigned on, we get nothing. Instead, the American people watch their government jump through hoops again and again to protect their own people and protect their own interests. We watch our leaders bankrupt us to send yet another warship and yet another bomb half a world away. We watch our government protect a class of super rich elites and their narrow economic interests who flood their campaigns with cash, go to their same parties, and party on their same islands. But we've seen this show before, haven't we? Was anyone held accountable for the 2008 financial crisis that crippled a generation? No. Wall Street was bailed out at our expense. But were working people bailed out after COVID-19 left millions of Americans financially devastated? No, we got a couple of stimulus checks while a handful of companies saw record profits. When the American people are practically begging their government to not get involved in more foreign wars, do we stay out of it and invest those resources at home? No. Defense contractors get more defense contracts, and yet another part of the world goes up in flames. And for what? So you're right to be sensing a pattern here. And that pattern says that when it comes to standing up for the American people, the government has no appetite. It says that when crises devastate the lives and livelihoods of millions of Americans, the elite responsible often face zero consequences. In the case of the Epstein files, they don't even face investigations. And in the case of the Pentagon, they don't even face a real audit. Americans are used to broken promises from our political leaders, but we can't afford to let things slide anymore. There is a midterm election this year and a presidential election just a couple years after that. For the first time in modern history, now would be a pretty good time to start demanding some real accountability from our elected officials and their elite friends. Because the Epstein saga is one of the most shocking crimes in American history. The last Middle East war will take generations to pay off, and a new one is just getting started. So if we don't hold anyone accountable now, then maybe the elite are right. They really can get away with anything. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, I hope you'll drop a follow, maybe a like, send this to some friends. It really helps out small channels like mine. Thanks again.